let's call this teaching, since I've never given it before. Let's call this teaching the Rule of 5 for leading. The Rule of 5 for leading. And in a moment, I'm going to explain to you how the Rule of 5 works, which is in itself tremendously life-changing. But what I'm going to do today is I sat down, I was up in San Francisco doing some writing for the last 2 days on another book. And I sat down and I wrote this out. I wrote this out and I want to give this to you. So I want you to look at the person receiving side and say, John's never done this before, okay? You tell him, he says, it's never done this before, okay? And tell that your neighbor, and he's doing it for us because we're special, okay? We're special, okay? Okay. Because again, if I'm going to have a relationship with this organization, your leaders and you, I want to come fresh. I want to come with teaching that really is where you're living and where you're going. And I know that you are the leaders of this organization. That as you go, the organization, the company goes. I know that. So let me talk to you a little bit about leadership. I wrote a book about 13 years ago called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, okay? How many of you have that book? Would you raise your hand? Okay, good. Yeah. In fact, let me do it one more time, and this time raise both hands so it'll look like twice as many people. That's the best-selling leadership book ever written. It's sold millions of copies. It's sold over 1 million copies in China alone, where I go twice a year to teach and lecture. And the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, if you don't have it, you want to get it. Because that's absolutely the foundation for understanding leadership and how to lead and what you need to know to be a better leader. And for the teaching today, I'm going to take the first law, the law of the lid, L-I-D, and I'm going to teach the law of the lid for not long, 3 to 5 minutes. And then I'm going to teach the Rule of 5, and then I'm going to share with you 5 things that you need to do in the Rule of 5 to lift your leadership lid to get and be a better leader. So let me just teach you the law of the lid. The law of the lid just simply says that your ability to lead will determine how well you succeed. In other words, the better you lead, the more you'll succeed. The better leader you are, the larger organization you can develop. The better leader you are, the larger your following, the greater your influence will be. The law of the lid is an amazing law, and it basically says that as you learn to lead, you will grow and be more successful. And the better that you lead, the more successful you will become. Now, for teaching purposes on the law of the lid, I want you to look up at me and let me just give you a visual so that we can kind of make sure we got this, okay? If let's say, for example, if this is my leadership lid, this is how well John Maxwell leads, okay? This is my lid. I don't go any higher than this lid. This is my leadership lid. This is how well I lead. And let's just say I'm an average leader, so it's a 5. I'm a 5. From a 1 to a 10, I'm a 5 leader. If that's the case, if this is my leadership lid, this is how well I lead, what the law of the lid teaches is that my business, your business, what you do with Vasalis right now, your business will come under your leadership lid, but it will never get any better or go any higher or grow any farther than what your ability to lead is. So that your leadership lid literally determines the level of your success. So if I'm a 4 as a leader, what that means is that my business will be a 4. Or if I'm a 5 as a leader, my business will be a 4. Does that make sense? Now, even in a great organization like this, my leadership lid will determine the level of my success. Now, when I began to understand the leadership lid, and I began to teach the leadership lid, all of a sudden everything began to change. Because you see, it was in 1974 that I came to the conclusion, after studying successful people for 5 years, from 69 to 74, after really looking and watching successful people, I came to the conclusion that everything rises and falls on leadership. And when I say everything rises and falls on leadership, you say, John, what do you mean everything rises and falls on leadership? What I mean is everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, what part of that don't you get? I didn't say some things. I didn't say most things. I didn't say 99% of the things. I said everything rises and falls on leadership. In fact, I know it. I believed it in 1974. I started studying leadership. I started teaching leadership. I started leading a long time ago. But now in 2013, I'm more convinced than ever that everything rises and falls on leadership. And one of the reasons I am is because I've developed the largest leadership training company in the world. We're in 174 countries. We've trained 6 million leaders. In fact, we are now training 1 million leaders every 10 months. And we're 2 years away from training 1 million leaders every 6 months. And by 2020, we'll train 1 million new leaders every month around the world. And so when the United Nations asked me to do the opening assembly to all the ambassadors, they said, come in and talk about leadership. The reason they asked me to do that is because we teach leadership, and in 2 years we'll be in every country of the world teaching leadership. And I understand leadership. I know how to train leaders. I know how to teach leaders. I understand leadership. It's been my life. It's been my life for a long, long time. And in 74, I was convinced everything rises and falls on leadership. And can I tell you, 2013, I know, without any question, everything rises and falls on leadership. So, how well I lead will determine how well I succeed. So, this is huge. I've got to become a better leader. And the question people ask me all the time is, can I become a better leader? They'll ask me a question like, John, are leaders born? When they ask me, are leaders born, I always give them the same answer. Of course they are. Come on now, think of that question for a moment, huh? I've never met an unborn leader. Huh? Hey, don't particularly want to either, thank you very much. So when they ask me, are leaders born? I know what they're not really asking, are they born? What they're really asking is, are there some people when they're born, they got it? And some people when they're born, they don't got it. And if you got it, you go to the front of the line. If you don't got it, you go to the back of the line. That's what they're asking. And I've got great news for you, and I do believe, I have no question about it, that there are some people that are born with what I call leadership leanings. No doubt about that, just like some people are born with kind of a musical leaning. No doubt. But the great news is, because I've done this for so long, and I've done this with so many over such a long period of time in every country of the world, what I know is you can learn to lead. You can learn to lead. You can learn to be a better leader than you are right now. You can grow as a leader. In fact, look at the person you're sitting beside and say to them, even you can learn to lead. Wow. Isn't that amazing? You weren't sure about that person, were you, huh? You weren't sure they could really learn, but now you got to they can learn to lead. Now, let's go back to this law. If I'm a 5 as a leader, that means my organization will be what? Talk to me. A 4. Okay, here we go. Because the leadership lid won't allow it to go higher. So, how do I grow my organization? This is very simple, folks. I've got to raise my lid, don't I? I've got to get this lid up, and because I can become a better leader, I can raise my lid, true? So I can go from a 5 to a 6, to a 7, to an 8, to a 9. Now, this organization is a 4. When that leadership lid starts going up, that organization goes from a 4 to a 5, to a 6, to a 7, to an 8. You see, your organization will grow to the size of your leadership ability. Now, if I were where you are and I was listening to what I just said, and I was taking notes, somewhere on my notes or somewhere on my iPad, I'd be putting a star right here. I'd be putting a rocket ship. I would be putting a sign that says, do not miss this. Because your ability to lead will determine how successful you'll be in this house, without any question. The best leaders will build the biggest business. No question. That should light a fire within you. That should spark, something should be going off on the inside right now. You see, everything rises and falls on leadership, and I've got to raise my leadership lid, and Maxwell says I can learn how to lead, and the better I learn how to lead, the bigger I can build this business. There ought to be something inside of you that says something like this: I had better learn to lead. Hello, this is an IQ test. If you miss this one, you can go home now. Vicelis can't help you. God can't help you. You understand? The whole concept, the whole idea that you can learn to lead, and if you learn to lead, and the better you learn to lead, the more successful you can become, and the greater your business. This is an absolute fact. It's not a theory, it's not a thought, it's not an idea, it's not a principle, it's a fact. And the law of the lid says, the better you learn to lead, the higher you lift that lid, the greater your business can become. Now, that's the law of the lid. So the question that I have today, and as I was talking on the phone to your leaders the other day, the question I have is then, well, how do I lift that lid? How do I lift that lid? If that's the key, then John, come on, let's get that lid lifted. And by the way, you're in luck because I know how to do that. Yeah, I really do. I ain't bragging, just living it, okay? I know how to do that. In fact, look at your neighbor and say, John can help us. Go ahead and tell you. John can help us. And look at your neighbor and say, and you need John to help you. Okay. All right, okay. Now. John can help you. Trust me on this. I know how to lift the lid. Now, to help you lift the lid, let me teach you the rule of 5. Now, the rule of 5 I can teach for 2 hours. So understand, I'm going to try to do this in 3 minutes. But I can with you. Because you're smarter than these other organizations. You understand? Okay, all right. With some, it's a week conference. Okay. So, with some, a week doesn't matter. Still doesn't take. Okay. The rule of 5 is the most life-changing concept for focusing on success that I have ever taught, that I've ever lived. So I'm just going to drop it on you just enough to help you understand the 5 concept, to help you understand the 5 things you need to do to lift your leadership lid. The rule of 5 just simply says, if you have a tree in your backyard that you want to cut down, and you have an axe, if every day you pick up that axe and you go to that tree and you swing 5 times with that axe to hit that tree, put the axe down. The next day you go out, pick up the axe, swing 5 times at the tree. Put the axe down. The next day you go out, pick up the axe, and 5 more times you swing at that tree. 5 times every day you pick up the axe, and only 5, not 50, not 15, not 500. 5. If you swing 5 times a day at that tree with that axe every day, let me ask you a question. What eventually is going to happen to that tree? That tree is going to... Now, there's no question about that, is there? There's any doubt. You don't have to sit around the table and kind of say, do you think it will? Let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya and hope. If you swing 5 times a day at that tree every day, that tree will fall. End of story. Now, if it's a big tree, it may take a couple years. If it's a little tree in your backyard, I don't know, maybe in a month you could knock that baby down. I don't see. Now, the size of the tree will determine how long it takes for it to fall. But that's not what we're debating here. What we're teaching here is if you swing 5 times a day at that tree, every day the tree will fall. Now, that's the rule of 5. The rule of 5 says, find your tree. What's your goal in life? What's your purpose? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to knock down? Where's your axe? What are your tools? What is it that you're going to use to effectively go after that goal 5 times a day? What are you? What is it? Because whatever that is, if you use it 5 times a day, every day, you'll be highly successful. For example, I write books. So let me just put that in writing for a moment. I've written 73 books. Jason, that was a nice introduction. It's 22 million, not 19. But what's 2 or 3 million? Give a little, take a little here, a little there. People say, John, how have you written 73 books? Oh, thank you for asking. The rule of 5. You see, there are 5 things I do every day that allows me to write that many books. It's not magic. It's not that I'm brilliant. It's just that I know the rule of 5. The rule of 5. You see, every day I read. Every day I file. Every day I think. Every day I ask questions, and every day I write. Every day I do those 5 things. Every day I read. Every day I file. Every day I think. Every day I ask questions. Every day I write. Every day I read. Every day I think. Every day I file. Every day I ask questions. Every day I write. Every day I think. Every day I read. Every day I ask questions. Every day I file. Every day I write. Every day I write. Every day I read. Every day I think. Every day I file. Every day I ask questions. Yes, I can do it in different orders, but every day. Doesn't matter whether you swing the axe left-handed or right-handed. You just got to hit the tree. Every day I read. File, think, ask questions, write. Read, think, file, ask questions, write. Read, think, file, ask questions, write. You say, now, John, what do you mean by every day? This is where it gets a little long sometimes. What I mean by every day is every day. Now you say, now let me. When you say every day, do you mean do you do that on Sunday? Every Sunday I read, think, file, ask questions, write. Do you do that on your birthday? Every birthday. Guess what? Every birthday I read, think, file, ask questions, write. Do you do that on Christmas? Guess what I do every Christmas? Every Christmas I read, think, file, ask questions, write. Do you do this when you're not feeling well? Can I tell you when I'm not feeling well? Even if I'm not feeling well, guess what I do every day? Every day I feel, when I'm not feeling well, I think, write, ask questions. Do all those things. Every day. You say, every day? At the age of 17, I started filing. I've never missed a day. I don't have 100 quotes. I don't have 1,000 quotes. I have tens of thousands of quotes. I don't have 100 stories. I don't have 1,000 stories. I have 10,000 stories. Where did you get all those stories? Where did you get all those quotes? Well, let me tell you something. Guess what I do every day? See, we overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in several days. And you got to understand, the secret of success is not the fact that, hey, I didn't say, hey, some days I get up and I write for 12 hours. And no. I didn't say I write all day. I didn't say I read all day. I didn't say I think all day. I didn't say I ask questions all day. I just said every day. Every day. You see, doing a little bit every day is a lot more important than doing a lot someday. And most people live in someday. Well, I'll tell you what, I think I'll get to that. You know what, I think I'll try that. You know what, I believe I got. Now, here's the key. You got to figure out what the 5 are. It took me 7 years to find my 5 for writing. You say, man, John, you're slow. I am. It won't take you 7 years. But it'll take you a long period of time. I could get the first 2 quickly, but the third, the fourth, the fifth, it took me 4 years to get the last one. Now, forget writing, because this isn't about writing a book. This is about leading. And what I'm going to do is I sat up in my hotel in San Francisco, and I wrote out what I think is the rule of 5 for leading. And I'm going to give it to you. And I've never given it to anybody else. You're the first ones to get it. So look at your neighbor and say, we're the first ones. Go ahead and tell him. We're the first ones. We're the first ones. Okay. You got it? We're the first ones. Okay. Hey, and since you're the first ones, don't blow it. You understand? Okay, I'm going to give you, if you can do these 5 things, the rule of 5 for leading, you will lift your leadership lid. How many of you want to lift your leadership lid? Okay. These 5 things, we're going to give them to you. And by the way, they're all simple. They're all simple. You can do all 5. You can do all 5. They're simple. Think about my rules for writing. Every day I read. You can read, can't you? Every day I think. Every day I file. Every day. No. See, the things that will bring you success are not complicated. They're simple. I'm a communicator, not an educator. Now, I have an education. I got 3 degrees, but I'm not an educator. An educator takes something simple and makes it complicated. Yeah, my father was a university president for 17 years. I know university stuff really well. An educator, they just take something simple and make it complicated. If you're not confused, they're not happy. A communicator takes something complicated and makes it simple. I'm a communicator. My name's John. I'm your friend. I'm a communicator. And I know how to communicate. I know how to put the cookies on the lower shelf. Yeah. Sure. Might as well have some. I've been having some. I know how to put the cookies on the, and what I'm going to share with you about leading, you can do this, but you can't do this in a day, and you can't do this in a week, and you can't even do this in a month. You can't do this in a year. This is a lifetime of living this rule of 5. Are you with me? Yes. It's a lifetime. So there's no quick fixes here. There's no magic. But you can do this. Okay. Let me give you the first one. The first of the rule of 5 for lifting your leadership lid is lead yourself. Lead yourself. Now you say, John, when you say lead myself, what do you mean? What I mean is lead yourself. You see, when we think of leadership, we always think of someone else, don't we? We think, okay, I'm going to rule, that's rule of 5 for leading, lifting my leadership lid. All right, I got to go find some people. Got to find some people. Okay. Find some people. No. Before you lead someone else, you need to lead yourself. I was doing a leadership conference, been speaking all day, doing Q&A the last session. A kid with an MBA stood up. He said, John, I love your leadership principles. My goodness. He said, I'm sitting here all day. He said, I'm an MBA student. I'm still in school. I don't even graduate till this spring. And he said, I kept listening to you and I kept thinking, boy, I wish I had somebody to lead. I wish I had somebody to lead. I wish I had somebody to lead. I wish I had a company. I wish I had a department. I wish I had somebody to lead. He said, I don't have anybody to lead. He said, where should I start? I said, good question. Start with you. Let me put it this way. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else follow you? So what do I mean? I'm talking about leading by example. I'm talking about having the leadership qualities within you that you want to teach someone else. Having the leadership values within you that you want to impart to someone else. I'm talking about visually leading people. Because leadership is visual. It's a visual responsibility and it's a visual act. Nobody has ever said to you, I am following a great leader, I just have never found him or known him. No, you're taking drugs. Every person that you've ever followed, you saw. Every person that you ever said, I want to follow, that person has had an influence on you. And listen to me very carefully, because the most important motivational principle in leadership life is this: people do what people see. So when they follow you as a leader, it's not what you say to them that makes you effective, it's what they see in you. Let's go to the 21 laws of leadership for just a moment. The 21 laws of leadership. The law of magnetism. The law of magnetism simply says, we attract who we are, not who we want. Oh my. That is so good. No wonder that book has done so well. It'll change your life. We attract who we are, not who we want. I run into people all the time, and they come to me and they say, John, I'm developing a group. I'm starting an organization here, and I'm getting people to buy in. And John, I'm all excited, and I look up and say, what kind of people do you want to be attracted to your organization? What kind of people do you want to bring in? What kind of people do you want to recruit? And they'll say, you know what, I want people with energy. Oh, I want energy. I like energy is important. I want people with energy. And I'll tell you what else I want. I want people with a character. I want somebody who has some integrity and an attitude. Oh, I want somebody who has a good attitude. Okay. And they start listing all these qualities they look for. And I'll let them list 3, 4, 5. It doesn't matter. But when they get to 5, I stop. I say, wait a minute, hold it. Okay, you want somebody with energy? Yeah. You want somebody with character? Yeah. Well, I want somebody with good attitude. Yeah. That's what I want. That's what I want. Stop. I don't care what you want. I got a question to ask you. Do you have energy? Do you have character? Do you have a great attitude? You see, if you have energy, a character, and a great attitude, guess what you attract? Birds of a feather. See, like begets. Like attracts like. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Before you ask somebody to follow you, make sure you have your own act together. You see, too many leaders, they're like travel agents. They send people where they've never been themselves. My name's John. And I'm your friend. Yeah, they're travel agents. They've never been there themselves, but they're always sending other people there. They've never experienced it. They've never lived it. They've never fleshed it out. They're not living it. They get up and they think, I'll just cast a vision. Boy, I'll just say, all right, here's the great way. People don't want to follow your finger. They want to follow you. Quit pointing. Quit talking. Talk's cheap. Any person that hasn't succeeded can talk. We teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are. Oh yeah, it's brilliant. When you've done this for 40 plus years, it's brilliant. It's not that I'm brilliant, it's just that I've done it so long. After a while, I catch on. We teach what we know, but we reproduce what we are. So if you're wanting to raise up some great leaders in your group, guess what? The first thing you need to do is be a great leader. Let me explain that to you. Let me just sit down for just a moment. At my age, it's a highlight. Let me just sit down for a moment and let's go back to the law of the lid. Remember when your lid was a 5, what was your company going to be? It was going to be a... Absolutely. The lid says you can't have a 6, you can't have a 7, you can't have an 8, you can't have a 9. You're a 5 leader. A 5 leader doesn't have 7s. A 5 leader doesn't have 8 companies. 5 leader doesn't have 9. 5 leaders have 4 companies. What kind of a person will you attract? If you're a 5 leader, you don't attract 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s. Can I tell you something? 8s don't want to follow 5s. 8s go meet a 5 and they say, whoops, Mr. Magoo. Oh. So how do you attract better people? Lift your lid. If you're a 5, you get 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. If you're a 6, you get 5, 4s, 3s, 2s. If you're a 7, you get 6. If you're an 8, you got this? Stanford research says Just came from there. Stanford research says that 85% of everything you know, you learn visually. 85%. The reason I say that the first rule of 5 in leadership is leading yourself is because visual example is the most powerful leadership tool. Axe to cut down your tree. Trust me with that. James Allen said, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're not anxious to improve themselves. And they therefore remain bound. The first person that you should teach leadership values to is you. The first person that should flesh out leadership is you. The first person that makes the decision to go forward is you. Lead yourself. I will promise you, start there. Start small. Start with you. When I was 25, I made a very important leadership decision that literally has changed my life. When I was 25, I made a decision that as a teacher, I would never teach something that I didn't 100% believe. And what that meant was I did a lot of things, I had a lot of subjects I didn't teach on. Are you with me? But I realized that the power, the life change, the passion all comes out of living it yourself. And once you start living it yourself, it is so amazing how people will begin to follow you. So don't leave this conference and go back and say, oh, let me tell you what I learned. No, don't tell them what you learned. Show them what you learned. My mentor for many, many years, John Wooden, used to say to me, John, I would look at my players at UCLA and I would say to my players, don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me what you're going to do. Number 1 on the rule of 5 for lifting your leadership lid is lead yourself. You got that one, don't you, huh? I can tell you got it. You are the smartest crowd I've talked to today. Every day I lead myself, right? Every day, what do? Secondly, add value to people. Number 3, every day I study leadership. Every day. And you say, now, John, when you say every day you study leadership, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is every day. How we doing, gang? Every day I study leadership. You see, again, back in the 70s, I heard Earl Nightingale say these words, if you will take 1 hour a day, every day, for 5 years on a certain subject, and every day for 1 hour, we'll study that subject for 5 years. In 5 years, you'll become an expert on that subject. And that was in the middle 1970s, and I said, I think I'm going to do that. I think until 1980, I'm going to spend an hour every day just studying leadership. I'm going to read leadership books, and I'm going to get around leaders. I'm going to study leadership, and by 1980, I'll be a great leader. And I did that every day until 1980. And by 1980, I thought, oh my goodness, this works so good. I think I'll do it until 1985. And so every day I did an hour of studying leadership until 1985, and I thought, oh my gosh, I know so much more in 1985 than I knew in 1980. I think I'll wait and go on to 1990. And so then I went for every day till 1990. I thought, man, I'm writing leadership books, and they're buying those suckers, and life is good. I think I'll do this every day. What have I done? Can I tell you what I do every day? Every day. My staff, any book with the title of leadership in it, I get it. I every day read leadership. Oh my goodness, every day. And because I have so much reading to do, I took 3 speed reading courses. Oh yes. So when I interviewed Condoleezza Rice on the plane out, I read a book on Condoleezza Rice. I can read a book real fast, you understand. I took speed reading courses so I could read more. Now, speed reading didn't increase my comprehension, but speed reading lets me get to where I need to get to so I can slow down so I can understand it. You see, 20% of a book has 80% of everything you need to know. Now, there are some exceptions, my books, for example. So when I say study leadership, what do I mean? Right, real quick, okay? I got to get this done for you. That means reading. That means resources. You see, in 1973, when I realized I needed to develop a personal plan for growth and I didn't have one, and I didn't know how to develop one, Success Motivation Institute out of Waco, Texas had a kit that I could buy for $795 that would help me to personally grow, and that kit cost me 1 month of my salary. And I bought it. Well, it took me 6 months to buy it because I had to save up for it. Most of my life, I have belonged to at least 7 CD clubs on leadership. Resources. Learning lunches. Every month since 1982, I've set up a lunch from somebody. I buy the lunch, I don't even eat. I just ask questions. Somebody that's smarter, faster, better than me. And I just ask questions. I call it my learning lunch. Do it every month. Oh, if I had 20 minutes, I'd teach you what I just learned. Oh, I would just teach you what I just learned in a learning lunch I had 2 weeks ago. But I don't have time. Events. Going to events, leadership events. Margaret and I started visiting presidential libraries because I love history and I love leadership. I've now been to every presidential library in America and studied it. I just constantly immerse myself in leadership events. I've already talked to you about filing. I file every day leadership thoughts, quotes. If I pulled out my iPhone right now, I could give you 36 quotes that I've picked up in the last 2 or 3 days that I filed, and I just keep them in there and I just keep reading them. I keep working, and I just keep reading them until I've got them, until they're mine. Study leadership. I do hope I'm lighting a fire for you, because I'm telling you, your leadership lid will determine how high you're going to go in this business, and I'm going to promise you, you can't increase your leadership without studying leadership. So every day I lead myself. Every day I add value to others. Every day I study leadership. Are you with me? Yes. Number 4, every day I practice leadership. I practice leadership every day. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his son, his one and only son, and this is why, so that no one need be destroyed by believing in him. Anyone can have a whole and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. He came to help, to put the world right again. I'm sorry, it wasn't on the screen, was it? Okay, what a way to start. Okay, but you got you heard the passage, and the thesis today of the lesson is that valuing people is essential to helping them find God. In fact, if you don't value people, it is impossible to help them find God. Do not miss what I'm about to teach. You see, we have a choice in this culture that we live in today. We have a choice to either curse the darkness, and that's what most people do, or we have a choice to turn on the light. And we got to ask ourselves, where am I going to be in my life? Am I going to talk about how difficult this time is Am I going to be divisive in my life, or am I going to be salt and light? And we have two challenges. And the challenge, in our culture today, we have two challenges. I see it so clearly. The first challenge is that we've lost our way in the area of values. We have probably now at least one, if not two generations that hasn't grown up in learning and living out good values in their own life. And then we have another challenge, and that is because we have lost our way with values, we cease to value people. I mean, we cease to value God's created race. I was in a conversation with a good friend of mine, Kevin Myers, recently, and he said, John, you're known for valuing people. And he said, how did you come to that place? How did you come to the place where you value people? When I talk about valuing people, I'm talking about valuing everyone. Okay? See, we have no problem with me teaching that it's important for us to value people as long as it's the people we value. But we have a horrendous problem valuing people who are not like us, people who do not have our values at all. It's kind of like, you know what, John, this is a good message if you talk about valuing people I like, but if you're going to talk about valuing people I don't like, just remember as I teach this lesson, my name is John, and I'm your friend. So here's my journey. It's a little bit more about me. I'm going to get to Jesus as soon as I possibly can, trust me. And by the way, when I give you my journey, I'm uncomfortable with because it's about me a little bit, but I'm also uncomfortable because it makes me look a little better than I really am. So as I talk about it, just say, he's not that good. And that'll make me feel better, and that'll make you feel better, and because I'm not that good, okay? But my journey in valuing people, it's a legitimate journey, and it begins, first of all, with my father's example. My father passed away last year on July 4th at 98. And my father valued and loved everyone. In fact, when he was 90, we were having a conversation one day, and he said, John, isn't it wonderful that as I get older, as people get older, isn't it wonderful as people get older, how much more they love people? And I said, that's not true. I said, I know a lot of people, they're getting older, but they don't love people more. I know a lot of people, they get older and they're grouchier. I know a lot, I mean, the reason that you do is because you valued people all your life. And here's what happens. As you get older, everything exaggerates. And if it's good, it exaggerates in a positive way. And if it's bad, it exaggerates in a very negative way. And my father was living a life of valuing people, of which it was natural for him as he grew older to even love them more. And the greatest advice he ever gave me was when I graduated from college. He said, John, if you will value people, believe in people, and unconditionally love people, he said, you will always have people that want to follow you. And that grid of valuing people, believing people, and unconditionally loving people has stayed with me all of my life. Every time I write a book, I write it because I value people. I believe in them. I believe the best in them. I unconditionally love them. Every time I teach a lesson, I go through that grid, and it's my father's example. And the values lesson I pull from that is very simple. How I value people determines how I view people. Don't miss that. My value of people determines my perspective of them. Another way to say it is how I view things is how I do things. How I view people is how I value people. My second experience in valuing people was what I call my evangelism awakening. And that was in my first little church in southern Indiana. And there was a man in the hospital that didn't go to our church, but his two sisters did. His name was Jim. And I visited him in the hospital. The sister said, "Would you visit Jim? He doesn't come to church." And I did. And I liked Jim, and Jim liked me. And we had a wonderful conversations over a couple-week period of time. Every 2 or 3 days, I'd go see him. I liked him. In fact, I liked him so much, and he liked me so much, he said, "John," he said, when I get out of the hospital, I'm going to come to church." And I told Jim's sisters, "Jim's going to come to church. Hey, Jim's coming to church. It's just so good, Jim's coming to church." And we got all excited, but there was a problem. Jim died. And I was the last person to see him before he died. Literally about an hour after I visited him in the hospital, he passed away. Now, this was an awakening in my life because I realized that my priorities were wrong. I had put the church, which is a wonderful place to come, I put the church above sharing my faith. And come to church and come to church and come to church. And we know coming to church doesn't change a person's life. Coming to Jesus changes a person's life. And I had my priorities all messed up. And God took me through a 6-month wilderness experience of, was I going to value people and share my faith wherever they were at the moment that I could, or was I going to constantly just kind of mess up my priorities? I can still remember standing between the two sisters. In that day, there was a custom in Indiana of viewing the body, and so the two of us are just there, and here we are, and I'm doing that, and I'm crying, and they think I'm such a compassionate person. I'm not a compassionate person. I'm weeping and repenting because I didn't value him to the place of sharing my faith with him, and he was lost. And it was life-changing. It was gripping to me. In fact, I only made one request at that time that I've honored for, my gosh, now almost 50 years. I said, "God, if you'll just help me to be able to win people to Christ, if you'll just help me to be able to effectively share my faith, I'll never ask you to have a great church. I'll never ask for anything else. Just help me to constantly see people through my life and influence come to help me value people enough to help them and to help find them and keep them from being lost." And that was the only prayer request I ever asked God in the area of my pastoral ministry. I mean, by the time I was 29, I had the 10th largest church in America, but I never asked for a large church. All I asked was to value people, because it's all about people. So people say to me, "John, what is your first love? Is it leading? Is it writing? Is it speaking?" And I love all that, but that isn't my first love. My first love is sharing my faith. You that are here today on all of the campuses, I just want you to know that there's nothing more important to me than to let you know how much God loves you and how much God can change your life and how much beautiful it is when you give your heart to him. But it all begins by the fact that God values you. And I want to be God-like. And if God values you, I want to value you. And I don't want to miss this. I don't want to miss this. So the values lesson here is just very simple. Value people like God values people. My third journey in valuing people is what I call my Zig lesson. And I call it my Zig lesson. Many of you would know this if you're especially a little bit older, but Zig Ziglar was a great motivational speaker, writer. And when I was young, I heard Zig one time say, "If you will help people get what they want, they'll help you get everything in life that you want." And I remember it was a paradigm shift for me, because as a young leader, I was trying to get everybody on my team, and here's my vision, and join me. And all of a sudden, Zig says, "You know what, if you'll just turn that around, and if you'll just go value people and help help them be successful, they'll help you be successful." And it was an incredible change. It was the moment that servanthood and serving people and placing people first became a huge priority in my life. And I went from people adding value to me adding value to them. It was a total change. And through my life, I've had many what I call servanthood surprises. But maybe the greatest servanthood surprise I've ever had was this. I knew it was right to serve people, but when I started serving people is when I started valuing people. Okay, stay with me. If I see you as hurting, I'll help you. If I see you as broken, I'll fix you. But if I see you as valuable, I'll serve you. You see, in the first two paradigms, I see you as hurting, I help you. I see you as broken, I fix you. I have the upper hand. I mean, honestly, I'm the guy that came in and I kind of rescued you. It's kind of like almost here I am to save the day. But I have the upper hand. You look to me and say, you're awesome. But, probably without you, I'd still be lost. But do you see how it changes when I see you as valuable? When I see you as valuable, I serve you. And I not only serve you, but I relish and just enjoy the fact that I get to serve you. And why is it? Because I see you as valuable. And so the Zig lesson basically taught me, just always put people first, always. It's not like a question, just put them first. And then another lesson that I had was what I call I'll have to explain this one, my hot stove lesson. Mark Twain said, if a cat sits on a hot stove, that cat won't sit on a hot stove again. And then he said, that cat don't like cold stoves either. That cat just stays away from stoves. Why? A bad experience. And in my younger years as a pastor, I had a young man that had such potential, and I loved him, and I equipped him, and I trained him, and I poured my life into him. And I was naive. Of course I was naive. I was young, and I would look at him, and I'd say, you and I will do life and ministry together, all of our life. And I was just giving everything I got, only to find out that I got betrayed, literally had to fire him, lost a relationship. And I said to myself, I don't like this. And I honestly, I said, I think what I'll do is that instead of embracing people and giving them the benefit of the doubt, I think I'll hold people at a distance. And I think what I'll do is I'll hire staff, but I'll say, that's your job, this is my job. We'll meet at the Christmas party. And for about 6 months, that's exactly what I did. And then I discovered something. I discovered something that really helped change my life again. I discovered the good news is if I help people, if I didn't value them, if I didn't think the best of them, if I somehow, because I got hurt by them, kind of isolated myself from them, here's what I found. The good news was that if I kept myself isolated and protected and walls, etc., the good news is they couldn't hurt me. But the bad news is they couldn't help me. So I made a conscious decision. Let them in. Let them in. Take the walls down. Value them right where they are. And the values lessons I learned in that period of my life was don't allow a bad experience to become a lifetime experience. How often I see people who, they've had a bad experience. We all have. We all have our stories. But instead of letting it be a bad experience and moving on, it becomes a lifetime experience. And we build walls, and instead of embracing and valuing others, we have a tendency to keep them away. The next lesson I learned on values was my Enron lesson. And all I've got to do is say Enron, and many of you that are old enough will think about 20 years ago, 2001, when the corporate scandals began, where big companies were taking advantage of their employees. And all of a sudden, the house of cards began to fall. And I was called to New York City by Time Warner, who was my publisher at the time. They said, we want you to write a book on business ethics because the businesses aren't ethical. And I looked at them and I said, I can't write a book on business ethics. They said, why not? I said, because there's no such thing as business ethics.
There's just ethics. You either got them or you don't. Hey, and if you have them, they work in business. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. You see, leaders, the advantage leadership has is leaders see more than others see, and leaders see before others see. And if I can see more and before other people around me, it puts me at a distinct advantage over other people. Now, the question is, when I have that distinct advantage, am I going to add value to people and value people and make their life better? Or am I going to add value to me and make my life better? That's the question. Am I going to motivate them and move them for mutual advantage, or am I going to manipulate them and move them for personal advantage? And out of the Enron experience, I wrote a book, Ethics 101. In fact, it's of all the books I've ever written, it's the book that got the most awards. And the only reason I can figure that out is no one else writes about ethics. But here's what was powerful. I wrote it based on the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. It's a value. It's a beautiful value. And that's when I realized that values, are above the law. Again, I don't know if this is going on the screen now. Just maybe it will be and maybe it won't. Surprise, surprise. Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit, or the fruit produced by the Holy Spirit within you, is divine love. It ain't gonna happen. I'm sorry, just give me a moment. My sense of humor is wanting to take over right now, and you have to understand. Some people say, I cannot believe what you say. You'd be more impressed if you knew what I didn't say. Trust me. Then you would really be impressed. Okay. Okay. Here we go. The fruit of the Spirit, the fruit produced by the Holy Spirit within you, is divine love, and in all of its varied expressions. Here's what I want you to catch. Here's what divine love looks like. The fruit of the Spirit in your life. This should be within us as believers, friends. This is the fruit of who we are as Christians. Joy that overflows, peace that subdues, patience that endures, kindness in action. Kindness in action. Faith that prevails, gentleness of heart, and strength of spirit. Never set the law above these qualities, above these values, for they are meant to be limitless. The values lesson is simple. Great values are greater than any law that could be passed. Let me tell you something. You can make a law in the land, but if you don't have good values, you'll still break it. We don't have a law problem in America. We have a values problem. And it starts on the inside. It starts on the heart. Don't force it. Don't force it. Don't force it. Number 6, my 6th lesson was the crossover lesson in experience. And this was when I've been writing books for many years, and my publisher in Nashville told me that my books were being read by the secular and business community more than the Christian community, and I had no idea. I had never planned that. It was a surprise to me. But the point that I want to make here in this lesson is that the moment that I realized that I was influencing lost people, that I was influencing non-Christians, I felt immediately called to that world. I said, I'm going to cross over. And my motto was the Apostle Paul, who so beautifully said, I entered their world. And I tried to experience things from their point of view. This is powerful. Paul said, I want you to know, I entered the world of lost people, and I tried to experience things from their point of view. And that was my commitment, to take Christ to people that would never come to church, to share the love of God to people that are never going to be in this type of a surrounding, that honestly, if somebody doesn't reach them, they're just going to be lost. And here's what I discovered. The closer I got to those people, the more I loved them. Don't miss this. The closer I got to them, the more I loved them. You said, That seems a little surprising. It shouldn't be. When Mark tells about Jesus going from the cities and the villages, what did it say? As he went from village to village, as he saw them, sheep without a shepherd, he had compassion on them. When did Jesus be moved with compassion? When he went and hung around with lost people. You see, you don't get compassion for lost people in church. You don't get compassion for lost people in a prayer meeting. You get compassion for lost people when you go out and live with lost people. And it doesn't happen. We don't kind of mystically pray this stuff in. But the moment you see them and you see their hurting and you see their brokenness and you see their lostness, all of a sudden you just begin to fall in love with them. I had a wonderful experience right before COVID. A year ago in February, I took some leaders, some business executives to Israel with me. Business executives that I had helped share my faith, and many of them I had helped lead to Christ. And when we went to the baptism, when we went to the Jordan to baptize them, I've been to the Jordan many times, I baptized a lot of people. But on this day, I was an emotional wreck as I was in that water. And in comes Becky, who was a Mormon, that I led to Jesus Christ. And then in came Diana, who was a Buddhist, that I led to Christ. And then came Roddy. He came into the water and I baptized him. He was an agnostic. And Susan was a Jehovah's Witness. And then there was John, who was a Jewish brother. And I'm just baptizing these people. And I'm just saying, it doesn't get any better than this. It doesn't get any better than this. We have a coaching company called the John Maxwell Team. And we have thousands of beautiful Muslims in our organization. And they come to Orlando for the training period. And there'll be 3,000-4,000 people because we do it twice a year for new coaches that are becoming part of our organization. And we just love them, and we just have open arms, and we just care for them, and we just serve them, and we just let the love of God be in our life. And inevitably, at the end of the conference, they'll come to me. And they'll say, I can't get over how much you love us. I can't get over how much you value us as people. And we have seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them come to Christ. But they come to Christ because we value them. If they don't like you, they won't like your God. What part of this teaching do you not understand? And if you're kind of on that deal, I'm trying to set the world straight, as if you're perfect, I go back to John 3:16 in the middle. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his son merely to point an accusing figure, telling the world how bad it is. He came to help get the world right again. And by the way, if you want to straighten other people out, good luck about yourself. You ain't so hot either. You see, the closer I get to them, the more I love them. The farther I am away from them, the more I judge them. When you're far, you judge. When you're close, you love. And the values lesson there is just be intentional in developing relationships with lost people. Now let's go to the main thing, the main one. It's my Jesus walk. If you want to be Jesus-like, if you want to be Christ-like, it begins with valuing people. If you want to be like Jesus, value everyone. I mean, when Jesus saw Zacchaeus, he said, Zacchaeus, let's go to lunch today. Everybody in the town of Jericho was absolutely appalled because Zacchaeus was a crooked man. Zacchaeus took advantage of people. Zacchaeus stole money from people. And they're looking at Jesus and saying, why would Jesus have lunch with a crook? Because Jesus said, that's why I came to this world. Understand this. The only people that had a hard time with Jesus valuing everyone was religious people. Religious people, because he wasn't hanging enough around them. The reason he wasn't hanging enough around them is because he came for lost people. Let me explain something to you. When you go to heaven, you get to hang with Jesus for eternity. And you get to hang with Christians for eternity. We're only here for a few years on this earth, not long. Here's a thought. Hang with lost people now. Share your faith now. When you get to heaven, you get to hang with Christians. Quit being so, I got to get to my group of Christians one more time. My name's John. I'm your friend. See, the town couldn't understand Jesus hanging with Zacchaeus. The disciples couldn't understand Jesus hanging with the Samaritan woman. It's a thief on the cross that looks at Jesus and receives grace in his last dying hour. I mean, the woman caught in adultery. Hey, the religious people were trying to write her off. And Jesus wanted to write her into his story. You see, religion places lost people on the outside, and we build walls. Relationships place lost people on the inside, and we build bridges. Self-righteous people are seldom aware of their judgmental spirit. I brought this along, if I can find it. Yeah. Maybe this will say it better than I can say it. Haven't pulled out a laminated card for a long time. You have to understand, when something's important, I laminate it, okay? If I would have been Moses at Mount Sinai, I'd have laminated the 10 Commandments. And I'd have found and stuck them in every Jewish pocket that I could find. I just took it. This will probably teach what I'm wanting to teach better than anything else I could say. A man fell into a pit and he couldn't get himself out. A subjective person came along and said, I feel for you down there. An objective person came along and said, it's logical that someone would fall down there. A Christian scientist came along and said, you only think you're in a pit. The Pharisee came along and said, only bad people fall into a pit. The news reporter came along and wanted an extensive story on the pit. A fundamentalist said, you deserve your pit. A Calvinist said, if you were saved, you had never fallen in the pit. A Wesleyan said, you were saved and you still fell in the pit. A charismatic said, just confess you're not in the pit. A realist came along and said, oh, now that's a pit. A geologist came along and appreciated the rock strata of the pit. An IRS man came along and asked if he was paying taxes on the pit. County inspector asked if he had a spatial permit to be in the pit. A self-pitying person said, you haven't seen anything until you've seen my pit. The Las Vegas gamblers said chances are anyone could fall into the pit. Optimists said things could be worse, and a pessimist said things will get worse. And Jesus, seeing the man in the pit, reached down his hand and he took him out. I would hope that God is talking to your heart. And I would hope two things are happening in this lesson today. One is I would hope that we who are Christ followers would begin to see the big picture, that we value everyone, every person, God's creation. We value everyone. But if you're not a person of faith, if you don't have a relationship with God, I would hope that today, as you're listening to this teaching on all of our campuses, I would hope today that you would feel valued. Because I want you to know God loves you so much. He gave his only son, Jesus. He said, son, I want you to go and I want you to live in their world, encounter all the things that they have to encounter, teach good lessons. But the reason I'm putting you on earth is you have to die. Because the only way that sin can ever be taken from the lives of people is if I give my son, my only son, for their salvation. That's what he did. That's what he did. You may say, well, John, you have no idea who I am. You have no idea what I've done. You don't have any idea the mess my life has become. I have no idea. You're exactly right. But I do have an idea of what God can do for you. And I do have an idea of what Jesus wants to do in you. He wants to forgive you of every sin. He wants to claim you as his own. He wants to give you life more abundantly than you've ever experienced. And he wants to give you the hope of heaven. And I want you on all of the campuses, including here, to bow your heads now with me, would you please? You're such a tremendous audience. You have been so receptive to this message that I've shared. I wonder how many of you on all the campuses, including this one right now, I wonder how many of you would raise your hand and say, hey, John, I feel that God loves me and God values me. And I think I could trust my life with somebody that cares for me as much as he. And I would like to know God in a personal way. I would love to know that every sin is forgiven. And I would love to know that I have a relationship with Jesus.
I'm kind of excited to unpack this. No, I am excited to unpack it. At first I thought, oh gosh, I hope this isn't a lesson to me. Why did I get chosen to talk about mistakes on the 1 week? Friends, I have to fall on my sword and tell you, this week I was supposed to be on an important call with Mark. And what did I do? I made a mistake and I had it on my calendar at the wrong time. And so there I was, just not doing anything, missed the call. And so I made a big blunder this week, and Mark was gracious to forgive me. But I know that this message hit home for some of us today. I know it hit home for me, and learning that, I would say for me, one of the big pieces as a leader, just as a human being, is learning to be okay with mistakes. You know, was that something for you, Mark? I feel like for me, learning to understand that mistakes are a part of life, they're a part of leadership, and that it is a part of success. That was something that was really tough for me to learn. Was that hard for you to learn, or was that okay for you?
No, it's very hard, and what's frustrating is it's still hard.
I know.
But I have found in maturity, Tracy, specifically in leadership, that there's really, I don't know, I think there's about 4 phases of failure in a leader. First is the pretend you didn't fail. Hopefully nobody noticed. I messed up, but hopefully nobody just saw that right there. And so we have this pretend I didn't fail kind of mindset. And we're kids, we're young, we're just getting started with leadership, and we have this, I'm pretending I'm not failing. The next thing is we try to deal with failure positively. You know, we try to go, oh man, I failed, but I'm trying to get better. I'm just trying to get better. And then I think we go through this failure process that John teaches us in his book, Failing Forward. And that's where we try to create optimistic return on the failure. I think the final thing, and this is, I want to just take a couple of minutes, Tracy, and tell you about a recent conversation John and I had about failure. But this fourth area is where we anticipate failure. We kind of get excited about failure. And it was with this mindset that John and I had a recent conversation. It all started, I was incredibly honored to be a part of a PBS interview about failure. Speaking of being chosen, when somebody calls you and says, hey, we want to interview you about failure, we go, okay, the secret's out. I am a failure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, I think. And so, but it was in this interview that this thought hit me that as oftentimes happens, you give John a simple little thought, and then he makes a simple thing so layered in its application.
Out of that, it started our relationship of doing this podcast together and the lessons that we've learned, starting with that one, which is going to lead us to the very first lesson.
So lesson one is that we work well together. And while it's true that we are friends and we genuinely like each other, there's a much deeper lesson that I think all leaders really need to acknowledge. And that is that, like, when you showed me episode one and you asked for that feedback, you accepted that feedback and then invited me to join you in the studio. I gave you a couple samples about how I envisioned it, but you immediately welcome that, in that how we work well together, I think, as leaders, working with our teams, is that I actually found that to be quite unusual. You were the head executive doing a very creative thing on your own, but you asked for feedback. That was huge. I had not seen a lot of that. And two, you received the feedback, and you weren't, we joke about it now, but you weren't knocked back by it at all. You said, "Oh, yeah, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Count me out." Yeah. You tried.
You want to do it?
I drug you back in, but no, you didn't go throw out your hand. You said, "How can we add value? How can we make it better?" And that we looked at our individual roles and responsibilities, and who's going to writing and creating and then executing and delivering it. I asked you. I remember asking him on the. I did two. Wrote two. We went to the studio. We did the two, and you said, "Man, this is what we need. This is great." I said, "You want to write the next two?" And you said, "No, I don't write." No. You said, "You're the creative." But I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" You said, "I react against stuff that's created." And I had never thought about that. That roles and responsibilities was really a magic sauce. Was I need somebody to help make it better, but I like creating it. And so we just started that partnership. And I thought, everywhere else I've been, I felt like I was knocking somebody out of the way. That, "Oh, you want to write? I want to write." We're competing.
Yeah.
You and I never competed on this. We found our roles, and we worked well together. I think a lot of leadership truth can come out of that with how you work with your team.
Yeah, I think when you talk about that lesson that we've learned to work well together, I think too many leaders at times, when you come up with an idea or you start something, like, you want it to be just your baby, and you don't want to bring in other pieces that have what we call kind of our unique intelligence of what we bring to the team. And it's okay to do that. Like, be open to doing that. And I'm grateful that we were able to have that conversation and you were able to do that, because we wouldn't be at episode number 200. Because what Perry was just talking about is one of the things that we understand about leading people is really understanding how you're wired. And so for me, one of the assessments that we use is the Right Path assessment, the 4 and 6. And what I think is so powerful about that assessment is really the sub factors that go into the results of that. And so I know that there's DISC and Myers-Briggs, and I just feel like this takes it to a deeper level. And when it gets down to one of the areas for me and how I'm wired, I'm very concrete, right? And you are not as concrete, a little more abstract, and you create. And I can react. And one of the examples we use about the difference between people on your team that are concrete versus abstract is that if you were to take a thin piece of metal and you had several pieces of paper, and you're like, "Hey, I need you to create something out of that to hold these pieces of paper together." Well, I'd probably just sit there for 4 hours looking at the piece of metal and the paper and go, I got nothing. Perry would come along with his creative mindset and a little more abstract than me, and he'd create the paperclip. And then I'd go, "Oh man, that's great. But you know what make this even better is, now let me put the slits in the ridges in the paper cut to hold it." And so we just create and think differently. And leaders need to be okay with having people around you, even when it's your idea and it's something that you want to do, to be able to best use not only your skill set, but best use the skill set. Because you love to write. You do it. You have a routine. You write every single day, and you're extremely creative. And so I absolutely love that, and it's worked well together, because I don't like to write. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to go there. So I don't write. So just make sure that as you go through this too, we're also very clear and working well together on what our roles are and how we come up with these podcasts. So I love that lesson. I think it's very very
lesson
applicable.
2 is that was interesting. Also, lesson 2 is that leadership is a journey that never ends.
Yeah.
And I laughed when I was just brainstorming on what have we learned about this that applies to every leader. Is that our original plan, as I mentioned earlier, was we're going to be just about the 5 levels of leadership. And I thought, okay, we did the intro, and then there's 5 levels. What do we do for episode 7?
And well, we started expounding on level 1 and 2. Then we branched into 360 leader and how we talked about influence, but influence is 360 degrees. How do you lead up? How do you lead down? How do you lead across? And then we started, all of a sudden, all the lessons as we began to get deeper and deeper into our own leadership journeys, we really learned that the 5 levels is a great framework. But off of that, we can launch 200 podcasts about other topics that are affecting not only you and me, but every leader that we interface with.
Yeah. And I love this lesson about leadership is growth that never ends. It's one of our enterprise values. It's so important to us. And I think as leaders, we need to remember that. Here's the words that I put to that lesson is that without movement, there is no movement. Meaning we just committed to being the 5 levels. And then, as you mentioned, with the intro, the first one, the intro, and then the 5, we were guaranteed 6. We didn't know where 7 was coming, but we just kept going, and we kept movement. And since we had that movement, other things happened. And too many times, I know I struggled with this from a paralysis standpoint, where you think you got to have it all mapped out and it's got to be perfect. And I just want to encourage you that as you begin to grow, understand there's going to be a cycle, a success cycle that we've talked about previously. And you just got to create some movement. The other thing too is I think anytime as leaders, if we're going to get into the lane of something being successful, then we got to be open to growing and having growth happen inside us so that you can leverage your best asset, which is you. By the way, leaders, you are your best asset. And so be open to that growing part of anything.
Lesson 3, I called it change, challenge, and continuous improvement are a part of everything worthy and good. We started in a professional studio. I remember we would drive, I don't know how many miles we would drive to our professional studio with our professional sound engineer. We had professional headsets and professional microphones. We had professional stools. We stood up and looked at each other the whole time. We confronted 2020 and the COVID situation, which threw us a curve, but we didn't miss an episode.
Nope.
We were able to flex with that. We used Zoom, we've used Teams, we've used other platforms to record. We've used WebEx. We've tried audio and video. Now we're on YouTube. Who knew that these two ugly guys would be on YouTube?
That's right.
And so change forced us by conditions. Some were chosen, some were not.
That's right.
To improve. And the only thing that was constant really was that from one week to the next, we were going to do this. But I just think for most leaders, I think the lesson there really is about you've got to be prepared to change and to flex and to have a plan B, be ready to go, because it's never going to be a straight shot.
Yeah. There's always an answer. There's always a solution, right? As leaders. And I think that sometimes, especially when you're doing something that you're passionate about, maybe you started, maybe it's your baby, you get frustrated and then you just kind of throw your hands up. But there are always things that are going to change. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance a whole lot less. And so how you react to that and how you solve those problems is going to be extremely critical to the success or the significant impact. We're over 3 million downloads, and so we're talking about 200 episodes, but the amount of people, you and I, that is, for us, that's significant. Like, we love the fact that it's not a number thing, it's the fact that, man, over 300 downloads, meaning that hopefully there's pieces in here that somebody has taken and become a better leader, because everybody deserves to be led well. And so all of that has happened with us having to pivot, which is a overused word these days, and change. The other thing that I'll say there is that also as leaders, when you are evaluating something that's your baby and you're getting it started, or things that you're doing, man, do not hesitate to force a change or let people come in and speak into a change that needs to happen, to where you are proactive and looking for ways to improve things so that you're always growing, always learning.
Yeah. I love that. And then lesson 4, I was thinking that, the interesting that the John Maxwell thought leadership is our platform. It's our where we start with everything, but we customize it to speak to specific audiences. And I thought that John's books and teachings have really inspired everything we do, inspired us as leaders ourselves. But it was up to us. I think it's up to leaders to apply And I think John would agree with that you have a concepts and he's very creative in how he presents the concept, but we must as leaders then figure out how do we apply that to others. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. I think so many of us read a book and we go, oh man, that's a good idea. And then we kind of gloss over what we learned. Maybe it's theory based, maybe even some of it was practical, but we don't ever apply it. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of what we were going after here, is to keep it short, keep it under 20 minutes and say, man, this is what's happening in the field. This is how you should apply it. These are things that you need to be paying attention to. And then also to communicate the message that leadership is influence. You don't have to have a title in order to have influence over a group of people, a team, voluntary, family, whatever it might be. And then finally, what this lesson here, one of the things I was thinking about was, is we talk about the fact that as leaders, you may not have anybody via title that's following you, as I use that in air quotes, but it's so important to be listening and applying principles before the moment so that you're ready in the moment when those opportunities show up. As you know, the great Coach John Wooden said, when opportunity arises, it's too late to prepare. Yeah. And so how do we begin applying what, we've learned as leaders in our lives? And then hopefully you've been able to apply that in your life, no matter what your title is, no matter whether you have direct reports or you don't, because leadership is influence.
Right. Good. And then number 5, I just thought, while it looks like the Chris and Perry show, we don't do this alone. It takes a team to do this, and a team is everything. If you're going to be, John says, one is too small a number to do anything significant.
Yes, right.
And we would not be anywhere without our team. And I remember we started off with Jean-Luc in the professional studio, and now we're here in our own studio with our own professional producers and Jake and Javon, and that we don't have a lot to say with the final. We started off, but
that's right.
It takes a life of its own once it leaves these microphones.
Yeah, that's right. I 100% agree with that. And I think anything that we do in life, in leadership, I think when you have a team of people, makes it so much more rewarding to take that journey together. One of my favorite images of leadership is the football huddle. And why that's so powerful for me, and one of my favorites, is that everybody in there, all 11 individuals in a football, over American football team, is that each one of them has a very distinct role. And if each one is not executing in their skill set, then the team is not successful. And that's what I think about when I think about the fact that we have a team around us, both on this podcast, on the other podcasts that we have, Maxwell Leadership Podcast, even on Don Yeager's Corporate Competitor Podcast, as we're helping with that. There are a team of people that are in that huddle, that are making decisions and executing in a way that allows us to impact and reach people that will have a significant impact on their leadership journey. Back to the statement that I said a minute ago, because we want to create powerful, positive change, because everybody deserves to be led well.
Well, it's been a blast. I just can't even believe it's 200.
Unbelievable.
It went fast, and I'm looking forward to the next one. If you could all write in with a suggested topic, because after 200, I have no idea.
Yeah, you're done. No, he's retiring.
No, there's sign off. There's a ton of content. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's it. Perry's out.
Perry out.
And so is Chris, by the way. Just how we started this podcast. Yeah, so. I think what I don't want our listeners to miss about what Mark's talking about here is he would gain knowledge. You would gain knowledge, and then you wouldn't just go ask questions to seek wisdom from outside, from your outer circle. You would actually then get in the trenches. You would learn and you would sweat. You gained wisdom from that. But then the way you pose the question to those that are wise in your eyes would then 10x your wisdom in that situation. So I love how you unpack that. I just don't want our listeners to miss what Mark's saying here, because in today's age, there's a lot of resources out there for people to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people gaining a lot of information without doing anything with it. And so you're saying, no. Get the knowledge, get in the trenches, lead, learn, whatever it might be, sweat, cry, all that stuff. and then talk about your experiences and posing the question to people that you seem that you look at as wise, and then it'll 10x your wisdom. Absolutely love that.
Well, and I'm gonna throw it to you for just a moment, because you made a couple of great comments. A couple of them were cute. You can even share the cute ones. But you had a couple of comments before we started recording today about how social media has impacted the landscape of wisdom. Yeah. And it was so good that I think it bears repeating. So just spoof off of that just a moment of how social media has impacted wisdom.
Yeah, I think my comment was, Jake and our team, they go back and they pull lessons from John. And that's what that lesson was today. And I told our team, I said, never more relevant is a conversation about this wisdom and where we're at with what we're dealing with in social media today. Mm-hmm. And there are people that have a lot of knowledge, and it's dangerous, and they're out, they don't have any experience in it, but they have knowledge, and so they're out saying things that they have no right to even be saying. And then John talked on here, there's lots of means but little meaning. Now, my little cute comment, which, listen, I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. I'm almost a 50-year-old male, and I don't like to be called cute, except for by Mark Cole. That's another subject. So just don't, if you see me, just don't come up to me and say, you're so cute.
You're so cute. That's right.
But my thing was, there are lots of memes out there. There's lots of these image out there, but what do they really mean?
Yeah.
Right? And so I just think, man, that's a message right now for us as leaders and as people of influence to understand.
Yeah. I think this world of Twitter, where John really started issuing quotes, and then people come across statements and they repost. I think all of those are great, but when you see those and you repost, or you see somebody post those, I think the bigger question is where has that been applied? And I'm sitting here in studio, and again, I hope all of you join us on YouTube at some point. We love to have you here in this community. But I'm holding up the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And what's humorous about this book is John has updated and modified a couple of laws at the 10th edition. In this edition, the John has changed some of the stories. But by and large, when you hold a book that still to this day, 8 to 10 to 12,000 copies of this a month is being sold, you realize this wasn't just something wonderful to say in a tweet 25 years ago because Twitter wasn't available.
Right.
This wasn't something to post on Instagram 25 years ago. It stood the test of time. And my concern is our social media instant access content in a bite-sized nugget is dumbing down the wisdom of just applied leadership experience. And so I hold this book today, not because we're going to give you a promotional 15% discount, although we will. I hold this because anytime you've got a book or an idea or a life lesson that can stand the test of time and that can inspire others to begin testing time, there you have wisdom between the covers, between the book covers. You have wisdom that actually will inspire a leadership depth that will extend beyond knowledge. And you made a statement, and maybe we can go here just a little bit, but this idea that wisdom in the right time, this knowledge in a right time, is a difference maker in how we turn knowledge into wisdom.
Yeah, I want to. One of the things I asked Mark as we were getting ready to start it, I said, "Man, listen, there's a communication deficit out there as we are growing and learning as leaders. And in order for us to continue to experience and become wise as a wise leader, there's things that we can look at in all areas of our leadership. But one of the things I was talking to Mark about, and I wanted to learn more from him, is I was saying knowledge is knowing what to say, but wisdom as a leader, somebody with influence, and that's how we define that here, is knowing how and when to say something. And I've seen you do this to where we've had conversations actually about, hey, sometimes you have to deliver a message with, hey, here's how we're going to do it. Sometimes you have to deliver it of, here's why we're doing it. So there is that whole process of how you deliver it. But there's also a timing thing, and that comes with wisdom, and you gain wisdom from that.
Yep.
And as a leader, especially at your level as a CEO, talk just a little bit about, man, there are things that you know with knowledge, but it's not the wisest thing to say until it's the right time to say that. How do you go about figuring out the timing of that and when to share what? Because that truly is wisdom in communication.
So I believe eatership. Wow, guys, this is the eatership podcast. Makes me hungry.
Yeah, I'm in.
I believe the art of leadership is really as important as the skill of leadership. And when you get into things like intuition and timing, I think you're into a concept of what I call the art of leadership. Yeah. And so let's talk about this art of leadership. I love Max Dupree's quote. I've quoted on this podcast multiple times. Leadership is about disappointing people at the rate they can stand. And really what that is talking about as leaders, if we see more and we see before, and John says real transformational leaders see more and they see before. In fact, he goes on a step further, as only John can do, and says they see more, and more before. And if leaders really see more before, then there is a responsibility to seeing things that others can't see. And I can tell you, Chris, as a member of our leadership team, what I see. But if I tell you when you can't see it, and I distract you from what you can see, I have a responsibility for your ineffectiveness for the next week while you're trying to lift your vision if it's not time to lift your vision.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, leaders, especially visionary leaders, opportunistic leaders, as John has mentored me to be, we see all these opportunities and we come home, we say, guys, there's another opportunity. There's another opportunity. Oh my gosh, there's an opportunity. And we go and we challenge our team from being able to focus on their responsibility and anticipation of them seeing the opportunity, and then we don't hold ourselves responsible for their ineffectiveness at their responsibility.
That's good.
So I want to share with my team the opportunities that I see, but when I share it, I am just as responsible to as what I share.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, so many leaders just come and blurt it out, create chaos, leave, come back. Nothing's accomplished since the time they came back, and they don't even take responsibility that they missed the law of timing. It's unwise leadership.
Yeah, that's good.
Then there's other times that I see it and we're stuck in this mundane, we got to get this done, and we forget that we got to get this done so that we get to the next peak to see what else needs to be done. And so understanding that art of when my opportunistic vision casting excitement for the future is a distraction or a incredible lift to the organization is what we're talking about here in the art of leadership. And I'll tell you this, the only way I can help you to figure that out is to try it.
Yeah.
Because doing it with my current leadership team is different than the leadership team that I had 5 years ago. So I have to know, I have to watch them respond. And there have been times that I have determined that my current leadership can't handle all of the opportunity expressions as much as a previous leadership team could. So it's the dynamics of when someone can hear it, when someone can get excited about it, when somebody will get distracted about it, and what's on tap for the current leadership productivity you're on.
I love your suggestion of just try it. Right.
Yeah.
And going back to saying we just got to live this out. Like you got to live it to gain the wisdom. As we wrap up, as you were talking, I want to give just another example. I want you to unpack this a little bit as you wrap up. I was thinking about something that as a change inside an organization is where really communication has, all eyes on it, right? Because, people are, when it comes to change, they're like, how's that going to affect me? And communication's got to be on point. As a organization, as a leader, we were going through a change, and we didn't do a very good job of communicating it very effectively several months ago. Mm-hmm. We then gained knowledge from that. You unpacked that knowledge for us, and then challenged us as an organization to make sure that now that we're communicating a new change, a new leader, a new stand-up, a new solutions group, hey, we better gain wisdom and then live it out a little bit differently. And you led us through that. And it was a great example of, hey, we did it this way. We had a little wisdom, all of us in the room. But then, man, we learned a ton, going back to what we started off about, learning lessons from failures. And then you helped coach us through that. And then you said, hey, and here's what we're going to do. And now we've done it again, and now we got more wisdom. And so to your point, it's just like, man, you just got to try it. You got to keep moving. You're never going to be perfect, but you got to keep living that out and just be able to accept that.
I'll just thank you, and I'll wrap up here, Chris, but I do want to talk about that. I believe we hold ourselves as leaders to a standard of needing to have wisdom with leadership. I'm the leader, I should have wisdom. I've been leading for 20 years, I should have wisdom. And I'm not opposed to that. We should be pursuing wisdom. I love John started the whole lesson with the Hebrew word for wisdom means skilled at living. Now, I love that descriptor and how he started it, because oftentimes we are doing something for the first time and we get frustrated with ourselves because we don't have wisdom. And I don't think you can have wisdom the first time.
No.
And so we go through this, and the example that you're just giving, we didn't have wisdom then because we had never tried to implement a shared solution before.
Yeah.
The second time we had, and we were starting to make similar steps to what we took the first time without contemplating. I don't believe we are held to the same level of scrutiny the first time as we are the second time, because wisdom should be more apparent in the second time, knowledge applied, right? I want to challenge us as leaders today. I continue to hear leaders spinning out of control emotionally, and we're in what's called the Great Resignation. And I think we're in the Great Resignation because we're holding ourselves to a standard of wisdom that is not available in the world today. Nobody, Chris, that you and I are mentored by led post-pandemic. Nobody. And yet we find ourselves now that there is a normal or a new normal, or we're not all cooped up in homes and wearing masks and waiting. We find ourselves now judging our leadership aptitude and ability with how we led pre-pandemic, and there is no more leading pre-pandemic. We've been through a pandemic.
That's right.
And I'm watching the emotions of leaders spin out of control because they no longer feel wise. But I've never led 2 years past a pandemic when a potential recession is on the horizon, when people want virtuality in their workplace more than they're not wanting it, they're demanding it now. And if I can just encourage us in the Maxwell Podcast Leadership family, quit judging yourself post-pandemic with wisdom that you think you and I should have that is only relevant to pre-pandemic conditions. We're leading differently now. There are no models to lead. And I know there's a sense of normalcy coming, but emotionally, there is no normalcy in leadership right now because things are different. And I just want to challenge you and I to let's support one another as we garner knowledge of leading in post-pandemic conditions, and let's hold ourselves to becoming knowledgeable and don't hold ourselves to being wise yet.
That's good.
And as we navigate through this, we will lead, because here's what I'm going to tell you. I hate to see the Great Resignation, because the world needs powerful, positive change, and all this challenge and negative and emotional negativity that we have is not bringing about a better world. We need you. We need you engaged. The world needs you to be a leader of powerful, positive change, because everyone deserves to be led well.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.